Okay, I'm back with Resist 35 Profiles of Ordinary People Who Rose Up Against Tyranny and Injustice. And today's topic is Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Dietrich Bonhoeffer. So we are in Germany in 1933. Okay, the start of World War II. And Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a pastor. And he said the church must not simply bandage the victims under the wheel of oppression, but put a spoke in the wheel itself. Dietrich Bonhoeffer considered running from the problem. When the Nazis grew in power in his native Germany, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a young pastor, left Berlin and took a job at a German church in London. He had studied in New York and worked in Barcelona, Spain. He had an international community of friends and colleagues that would have helped and supported him. But in London, he did not feel the peace and security he had hoped for. Horrible things were happening in Germany. He needed to go back home. Back in Berlin, he formed the Confessing Church, a group that openly protested the practices of Nazism. He recruited theological students in hopes of opening their minds and hearts to the trouble at hand. But the Gestapo, the secret police, watched him closely, and eventually the Confessing Church was forced to shut down because they were doing something against the government, against the Nazis. So anything that went against the government was shut down right away. You just couldn't do it. It wasn't allowed. He got a teaching job in New York City at Union Theological Seminary, far away from Germany, far away from the Nazis, and far away from Adolf Hitler. But once he got to the United States, he realized that he could never live with himself if the only safety he'd managed to secure was his own. A month after his arrival, he gave up his position in New York and returned to Germany, where he threw himself into the underground resistance. Dietrich soon became what he had never imagined when he was a young theology student studying at seminary. He became a spy, something he never thought that he would ever become. He was actually a spy, like Harriet Tubman, right? Underground, right? Very similar. He got a job at Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence service, working against the Gestapo from inside their own operation. He helped evacuate Jewish refugees. He siphoned off funds to help them start new lives in safer places. He considered running away, but instead he came back to help the most vulnerable citizens of his country escape to freedom. Unfortunately, Bonhoeffer was found out. He was sent to a prison camp in Germany to await trial. He had a trial and he was found guilty. And the next day he was hung in 1945. 2 weeks before the United States got there and ended the concentration camps. Basically, ended the war. 2 weeks before that. So the lesson here: the instinct to run away is natural. It's how we respond to that instinct that defines our courage. Okay, it's natural to run away from something uncomfortable, something that we don't want to deal with. But it's how we respond to that instinct that defines our courage. So I want you to think about a time when you wanted to run away from something, but you didn't. You faced it. What was it? Write about it in your journal. And or write about a time where you did run away from something because you just couldn't face it. Write about that, because that's okay too. Right? Because the quote says, how we respond to the instinct defines our courage. Okay? So no judgment. Trust me, in my life, I've run away from things, and I've stood up for things, and I've dealt with things. And so I'm thinking about this too. I'm thinking of when was a time that I ran away from something instead of facing it head on. So I'm going to write in my own journal about that and keep it to myself. But think about that. He kind of reminds me of Zapata, right? Remember, Emiliano Zapata also decided to, he could have just been fine living his life, but he wanted to help other people. Again, Harriet Tubman. She was free. Harriet Tubman got herself free from slavery. She was fine, she was free and safe. But instead, she went back again and again and again to get family members, friends, other enslaved people, help them find a way to their freedom. That's courage. That's being courageous. I've never done anything like that. And maybe you haven't either. But maybe someday you will. Maybe someday you'll have to do something like that. Hopefully not like that, but something courageous that helps more than just yourself. More than just yourself. Okay? So think about that, and I will see you next time for your next subject. Bye.